We're live. Welcome everybody to another Ubuntu Community Q&A. I'm Michael Hall, one of the community managers here at Canonical, and with me is Alan Pope, another one of our community managers here.
Hello, Mike. Long time no see. I haven't done this for a while, so
neither have I actually. It's been
we've slacked
I think,
off
before the last one.
Let everyone else do the work. Yeah.
All right. So for those of you who aren't familiar, we do these every week on Tuesday at the same time. They are hosted on ubuntuonair.com, where you will see the video, and right below it you will see an IRC window, which is where you can ask us all of your questions. If you want to use your own IRC client, we are on Freenode. The channel is #ubuntu-on-air. The way it works, you ask questions starting with the word question in all capital letters. That way Alan and I get a highlight on it and we don't miss it. And we will go through and we will answer them in the order that they come in, and we will try and get through as many of them as we can. There's a few minutes delay in the video, plus having to answer questions means that we're going to be a little bit behind when you're asking them. So please don't wait until the very end of this video to ask your question, or chances are it's not going to have time to get answered. You can ask questions anytime. You can ask them on any subject. Keeping with Ubuntu will probably help. Keeping it not too technical would be good too, because Alan and I can't help you fix bugs or triage stuff live on the air. But we will do our best, and if we can't answer your question, chances are we can tell you who to find on IRC that can do that. All right, we usually start with updates. Alan, do we have any updates?
Something I've been slightly distracted just before the video started. I thought I'd mention. In the UK, the BBC have just trialed, started an HTML5 version of their iPlayer, which is the TV delivery system, and I just tested it on my Ubuntu phone, and it works straight away. That's me watching Doctor Who in our web browser on my Ubuntu phone with no plugins, no faffing about, nothing at all. I just went to the page, pressed on Doctor Who, and started watching it, and it all works. I've got the volume turned down at the moment, but yeah, it does work.
Nice.
So, yeah.
So this is Alan working on his Ubuntu phone.
I'm going to test the browser thoroughly, just the same way as I test all the games that are in the store as well.
It's a difficult job, but somebody's got to do it.
Yeah,
Speaking of testing the browser, I've actually been using the Ubuntu browser as my daily browser on the desktop for about a week now.
How's that been going?
It's been surprisingly good. It's fast. It's as fast as Chrome as far as switching tabs and loading tabs, because it is using Chromium underneath, and so you've got separate processes for each thread's rendering content. So that's really nice. But it doesn't seem to consume as much RAM as Chrome does. So my laptop with its 4 gigs of RAM, which I thought was a lot when I bought it, is not constantly swapping all the time when I use the Ubuntu browser, which is nice.
So of all the things you use on a daily basis, the common things like, accessing your email, documents, Reddit, of course, all of that, I assume, just works, right?
The only thing that hasn't worked right now, actually 2 things that haven't worked. Hangouts don't work, which is why I had to load up Chrome to start this, which is why we were a little bit late getting it started, because Chrome hates my RAM. And the second thing is some videos don't work, and it has something to do with it not exposing codecs to the HTML5 player. So some videos work, some don't. It depends on what the video is actually using.
Right.
Other than that, it all works surprisingly well. I did have my chief complaint was that it didn't have the Alt plus number shortcuts to switch between tabs, which had just become muscle memory for me. So I'd start hitting Alt 1, Alt 2, and nothing happened. But because it's open source, and even more important, because it's QML and easy, I was able to go in and add that support myself. So I've got a merge proposal in with the web browser app to add that. But after I added that, it's been great to use.
Awesome.
I think the biggest praise that I can give it right now is that maybe once a day, I realize that I'm using it and not Chrome or Firefox. Most of the time, it doesn't even register to me that I'm not using one of the major browsers anymore.
So what about the big things that people will obviously ask questions about is usage. Is does it crash a lot? Does it use a lot of RAM? Because those are the two things that people seem to complain about in other web browsers: is their resource utilization and the stability. So how has that been?
It seems to use more RAM than Firefox. I haven't really been able to compare it directly because it does run multiple processes, and I don't know how much of that's overlap or not. Somebody could probably tell me how to calculate it properly. I just don't know how. And it does crash. Lately, though, Firefox has been crashing a lot more for me, so it's actually more stable than Firefox.
Go us!
Yeah, that's actually why the reason I switched was because Firefox started crashing on me so much, I had to give it up. And it started doing this thing where it would change my spell check to Arabic.
Oh, mine does that as well.
Not even every restart. Like, I'll be on a page and I'll set it to English, and then 5 minutes later on the same page, it's back to Arabic. And I have no idea why.
Yeah, mine does the same thing, and I've got no idea why.
So I gave up on it and went back to Chrome for all of 5 minutes before I realized how much I hated being on Chrome. So I thought, hey, let's see this Ubuntu browser, see how it is. It was just on a whim. I didn't expect to stay on it more than 5 or 10 minutes, and I've been on it for days now.
So, I mean, this is the same code that's on the phone, right? It is the same.
Yes. Yep.
Interesting.
It's a little bit newer because I'm running trunk, but otherwise, yeah. And it's neat because on the phone, you've got the bottom edge, you swipe up to reveal all of your tabs. But on the desktop, it's got the tabs across the top, just like you would expect on a normal desktop browser. Right.
Cool. So one of the other things that I wanted to mention, and I know you've been playing with as well, is the Convergence stuff that's slowly drip feeding into the phone and tablet images. And when I talk about the phone and tablet images, specifically the Nexus 4 and the Nexus 7 images, because they both support video out over the or HDMI out over the USB port on the bottom of the phone, which some of the other devices either don't support in hardware or don't support in software, or there's some blocker. But we know the Nexus 4 and the Nexus 7 do work.
Right.
And you've been playing with that as well?
I have. Plugging the HDMI in is a little bit buggy. It was working well in Mir 0.14, and then they broke it in 15 and 16, but I've been told it's fixed and working again in 17. So right now you have to plug it into HDMI and then boot it up for it to work. After that, it just works. And recently, so I'm on the daily proposed channel for my phone, so I get daily updates. And just the other day, I got in a new Bluetooth mouse. So one of the problems with the Nexus 4 is that it doesn't have enough power supply to the micro USB to actually power USB keyboard or mouse. So you've got to use Bluetooth for it. So I had to order this Bluetooth, and let me see if I can show you. Can everyone see this?
Yes.
So you've got the little Bluetooth icon up there. Now I'm going to switch my mouse on, and that should turn white. Let's see if it's working.
It takes a few seconds. It's gone white now.
There it goes.
And then
now I've got window mode. And so in this version,
practical and usable on a 5-inch display, of course.
Well, if it was plugged into a TV, then it would be a whole nother story, wouldn't it?
Right, of course.
So you don't have a mouse cursor yet, but let me see if I can go all the way to the side. Oh, now I'm getting... I probably shouldn't do this live. That's probably a bad idea.
Yeah, Twitter notifications, always a good idea.
Okay, so there we go. I've managed to trigger the switcher. So this is the desktop mode switcher, and you can see I can click on anything here, and it'll go to it. You've got the launcher here on the side, just like you would expect, and it automatically switches it so your big friendly button's up at the top. And then when I switch off my mouse, again, give it a minute to realize that the mouse isn't there, and boom, back to phone.
Nice. So I also went out and got a Bluetooth mouse. I went and got a ThinkPad one because I love ThinkPad stuff, and so I got this one. But I also got a keyboard, and there are lots of Bluetooth keyboards on the market. I happen to get this one, which, according to the back of it, is a Logitech K480. There are lots of other models, and I'm not endorsing this one in particular for any reason other than this is the one I bought and it works. But But the cool thing about this is it's got a switchy thing on the side, so you can pair it with multiple machines. So I've got this paired with a Nexus 4 and a Nexus 7, and I could pair it with a third thing as well. But it just works. You just press the pair button, and then it connects to your device. And the kind of nice thing about it is it's got a because it's got this little cradly thing. You can put your device in the cradle like that, and use it directly there. And because the Nexus 7 is actually quite a decent resolution display, you can actually use it, in desktop mode. So for days when the HDMI support breaks, like it did recently, you can actually carry on using it fairly usably as a kind of desktop.
Although I will say a 7-inch screen isn't a whole lot better than a 5-inch one.
No, you're right, and I have had to go out and invest in a pair of glasses as a result.
Yeah, I had the old. Do you remember the original EPC, the 701, the little 7-inch one? Yeah, I had that for a little while, and that screen it's good for browsing the web and checking email on the go, but it's not real good for much else.
Right,
although
you don't mind
the Nexus 7's got even
over like that, like tiny.
The Nexus 7 at least has a better resolution than that one did.
Yeah, and having a decent keyboard as well is really quite cool. Yeah, I'm quite impressed. And the other nice thing about that keyboard or Bluetooth keyboards is when you're in something like the terminal, if you then put it into the keyboard and turn the keyboard on, as soon as you turn the keyboard on, the on-screen keyboard disappears, so that you can get all your screen area back and actually use it without having a big on-screen keyboard in the way, which is quite cool. And as you'd expect it to work. Sorry, I'm distracted out the corner of my eye by Davros. Sorry.
Working.
Yes.
All right. So one more announcement. We've got a couple of UbuCons coming up. Mm-hmm. UbuCons are mini conferences, either standalone or combined with another conference. So in October, we have UbuCon DE coming up in Germany. It's in Berlin, I think. And then in November, in Florida, right here in my neck of the woods, we're going to have another UbuCon as part of the FaucetCon conference. So if you're in Germany or Europe or the Southeast US, those are good events to go to. We're going to have lots of good sessions talking about various aspects of Ubuntu there. So it's UbuCon EE, and let me get the URL for the one in Florida. Just posting these into the IRC right now. Here we go.
Awesome.
All right. Well, we've gone through all the updates, I think.
Yeah. Let's plow into questions, shall we?
Go back here. All right. The first one is from Ridgewing. He's asking, who is the guest today? We don't actually have one lined up for today. I think Unity 8 Convergence was our guest today. You can ask him any questions that you want. All right, next was Gummy Gum. He asked, what happened to the Meizu MX4? It's gone from Meizu Mart.
Yeah, I don't know, actually. It certainly was for sale, because a load of people bought them and put pictures online, but it's disappeared from the site. I'm not entirely sure why that is. I'm led to believe it will come back, but that's anecdotal information I've heard. I don't know, unfortunately, exactly what's happened there. You're muted. Can't hear you, Mike.
Have I been muted that whole time?
Yes.
Okay. So I was saying that as far as I've heard, and this is all just public stuff I've heard, people just bought all of the ones that Meizu had made with Ubuntu so far.
Right.
So I don't know if they're going to do a new batch of the same model, or they've hinted at some more phones coming. So I don't know if we're going to get Ubuntu on a different model of Meizu phone. But yeah, I've also heard that there will be more coming.
Okay. Yeah, it's a shame because it's got a decent spec device. It's unfortunately not. I don't believe it's capable of doing the whole convergence thing. I don't think it supports HDMI over the USB port. So
I
that's
don't think so now.
Yeah. Unfortunately, my phone is in pieces because the screen cracked on mine, so I don't even have an MX4 anymore. Unfortunately. Okay.
Yeah, I never had one, so you get no sympathy from me.
Okay. Next question. Where are we up to?
I think we're at Pavak.
Pavak Paul. Question, what about making Chromium the default Ubuntu desktop browser instead of Firefox? Good question.
So, a question that comes up every 6 months, I think.
Yeah, I think we're a bit late for that for 15.10. I think we're at freeze now, so we're not going to make, as far as I'm aware, any significant changes like ripping out default applications at this late in the 15.10 cycle. It's entirely possible we could have another conversation about this for 16.04. We've got an Ubuntu Online Summit coming up just after the release of 15.10.
First week of November, I think.
That's right. And so that would be the ideal time for us to have a session to revisit all of the default apps in 16.04. And I would expect that would be a session that Will Cook would probably run, being that he's the lead of the desktop team. So, if you have arguments in either direction, then it may well be a good time to start bringing those things up as we lead up to those online summit discussions. Bring them up on the Ubuntu desktop list or Ubuntu Devel Discuss, either of those lists, because that's where the developers hang out. And if you have any solid arguments for why we should use one browser over another, it shouldn't necessarily be limited to Chromium or Firefox. Maybe there's another browser out there.
Just for fun, I'm going to throw in the Ubuntu browser into the mix and suggest that we look into that because it has been working surprisingly well for me.
Right. I mean, obviously there are lots of factors to include, not just how well updated it is, how performant it is, and whether it eats your RAM and all that kind of stuff. There's also some features that people want in their web browser that I guess are missing from some of the browsers. Like our web browser doesn't have support for extensions and plugins in the same way that Firefox and Chromium do. So those could be killer features that everyone wants, and therefore that browser would not be a candidate. I don't know. But that sounds reasonable to me. So it makes sense for us to have those conversations.
And again, this is a conversation that we have had regularly for years now.
We have, but and the state of play changes over time. The level of support for one browser, they kind of go up and down on either side. And depending who you ask, people are passionately for Firefox because of their arguments for the open web, and then you find other people are passionately for Chromium because WebKit or because Blink or because particular extensions or something, for whatever reason. And we need to have that discussion and make a decision.
Yeah, I think it's good that we have it regularly. I think because it changes so frequently and because it is such an important piece of the overall desktop product, that it's good that we reevaluate it every 6 months.
And that's the same for all of the desktop apps. We're probably going to have conversations at the online summit about things like music player, the software center, whatever other apps that we have. There are some that are no-brainers. I don't think anyone would advocate for replacing LibreOffice with OpenOffice, for example. There are some that we just probably won't even need to look at because there's just no compelling argument the other way. But for where there's something like Firefox and Chromium, where there is a split there, it's worth having the conversation. Hopefully that's answered your question.
All right, this next one's an interesting one. It's from Ridgewing. He asks, would Popey and Michael describe themselves as free software advocates? Where does the boundary lie between transparency and convenience? Do you want to take that one first?
I'm a pragmatic free software, advocate, but I'm a terrible free software advocate because I also have a PC sat here running Windows, so that I can run some Steam games and some other applications that only run Windows. So I love the idea of using free software everywhere for everything, but then I look around me and I see mobile phones that have non-free software in their radio. I see laptops that have non-free BIOSes and non-free firmware in their wireless cards. And, looking around me, I can see a lot of non-free stuff. So if you were to say, are you a free software advocate? Yeah, I am, but I'm a pretty terrible one if you go by what's on my desk right now. I would like to have a system where all the software I run is free software. That would be great. And I know some people do that, and they do that by not having access to Netflix, or choosing not to play any games through Steam, or choosing not to use Wi-Fi, or whatever, those sacrifices they choose to make. They're better than I am because I'm not willing to make those sacrifices.
So kind of the same vein, I consider myself a free software advocate. I use, Linux exclusively for my PC and servers. I've got Ubuntu on my phone, which is my only phone now. I will use open source and free software whenever it's an option, but I'm not an idealist. If there's not a free software option, then I am perfectly happy using a closed source thing. I used Chrome for a long time over Firefox because it ran faster and it worked better with Hangouts. I'm still using Chrome now because it works with Hangouts. And when I tried to launch Firefox this morning to start the Hangout, it immediately crashed. So I don't have an ethical problem with using open source or with using closed source software. I don't consider it morally bad to do, but when I have the option, I will favor open source. And even if that means a bit of inconvenience for me, I'll still choose open source.
Cool. It's an interesting question. I'm glad you asked that because I don't often get asked that question. The next question is from Gummy Gum. And the question is the 25,000 Ubuntu phone sold estimate correct?
So going back to what I said earlier, actually I may have been muted when I said this earlier. Alan and I are not in the sales team. We don't have inside information into what's going on in sales. So we know about as much as you do in terms of the actual number of phones sold. And in fact, if I were to go try and find information that I have access to verify this claim, it would be the same stats that Ricardo was using. So it sounds pretty accurate. There's a lot of different variables that could swing it one way or the other, but I think overall it's probably a good estimate.
I think the other thing to note, when you look at that number, it's a bit like the number of Ubuntu desktops that, I think some years ago, maybe 5 years ago, I think Mark Shuttleworth said on his blog that 20 million installations of Ubuntu desktop, and that number has never been updated. No one's ever provided evidence to corroborate that that's the case, or that it's gone up or down, or we've never provided any public info. So all of this is wild speculation. Okay, and the other thing to bear in mind is right now it's actually not super important for us as a company whether it's 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, 40,000 or what. That's not a vital statistic that's driving us right now. We're working towards making an excellent product, and right now it's the kind of product that developers would use, the kind of product that enthusiasts would use. People who have used Ubuntu for a long time are enthusiastic about a free software platform, in so much as phones are free software. I don't think you should look at that and directly compare that to, for example, how many Android activations there are per day, or how many iPhone 6 Pluses were sold on launch weekend, or whatever. There's, we know the figures are, and that figure sounds reasonable. I don't know what the figure is, but that figure sounds reasonable. It could be more, it could be less. I don't know. But I don't. It's not something we're worried about, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the number of phones that are actually out there in use matters to app developers who are thinking about, users. But as far as Canonical and our OEM partners are concerned, really the only important question is, in terms of gauging its success, is whether or not it's breaking even and making a profit. There's an old joke about business where, somebody says, we lose money in every sale, but we'll make up for it in volume. If we can sell, 1% of what the Amazon Fire phone sold, but sell each device at a profit, then we're more successful than the Amazon Fire phone was, because they lost a lot of money on that, even though they sold a bunch of phones. So the important question as far as sustainability is whether or not we're making that break even, and whether or not it's enough for OEMs to continue supporting Ubuntu phone. And from everything I've heard, we are doing that.
Right, and it's a positive thing. Like when I look back at when we launched our first phone, where is it? Oh, there. So this one, this is the BQ E4.5, and this is the Android version. This isn't even the Ubuntu one. This is before we launched the Ubuntu one. And when the Ubuntu, when the one came out that had Ubuntu on installed at the factory, we were, concerned about us as individuals. We were concerned that, are people going to actually buy this thing? Are they going to use this thing? Are they going to play with it, develop apps for it? Individually, we were thinking it's important to us that people like what we've done and they use what we've done. But it's more important that the people who are selling this thing carry on wanting to sell this thing. And the fact that after this E4.5 came out, BQ then said they want to make the E5 as well, and then they come back and say they want to make a converged device as well. That says a whole lot more than whether it's 25,000 or 30,000 or 10,000 people who've actually bought it. The fact that the people who make it want to carry on making it and want to make more of them, to me, is a success, and I'm happy with that.
All right, moving on. Ridgewing asks, what happened to Popey's disco ball in the corner? Did you change house or just rooms?
Actually, it's still the same room. The disco ball was up here above where the camera is, and I think I moved it somewhere else. But this room was redecorated, and the hook that the glitter ball was hanging off was taken out of the ceiling, so I've got nowhere to hang it. So instead, I've got a lava lamp, which you can see over my right shoulder in the background there. I like my.
It's funny. Usually, people are commenting on my my fan back here, which looks far more interesting on the camera than it actually is. It's just a light with a fan, but because of how the reflection hits it, it looks like it's got all these fancy moving lights and stuff.
And it's kind of like flickering madly in the background.
Yeah, it does that. But if I turn it off, I die in here because it gets so hot. Even almost October, and it's still so hot outside.
Excellent.
All right, what's next?
Disco ball, what's next? Gummy Gum had a follow-up question. How do you guys feel about the 2-month OTA updates? Aren't they too far apart at this stage? We have to live with bugs for 2 months. That's a good question. So the target
it's a very interesting statement. I'm just going to jump in and interrupt right here. Saying that you have to live with bugs for 2 months, and then you compare it to how often Android and iOS get updates. It really shows the the mindset, how it's different when you're using an Ubuntu phone.
So I have these two devices. This one is my my own personal phone that I bought from BQ, and I use the retail channel, so I suffer those same bugs right on that device. This one, however, I'm running the the RC proposed channel. And as a result, I get an image every day on this one, every weekday. I think we turn them off at weekends. But every morning I come down and I go to settings and I update my phone and I get new stuff. That means fixed bugs and it means new bugs.
Yeah.
And so, if you really want to, be at the bleeding edge, you could run RC proposed. We generally don't recommend it for end users, but if this is a second device or it's a developer phone, maybe you want to have a play with the bleeding edge things. Maybe you could use that. The target is actually 6 weeks, not 2 months. And I think that's about right. I think we would burn out if we tried to produce land software, QA it, and release it and put it on devices in anything faster than 6 weeks. I just don't think that's humanly possible, because remember, we are a tiny little company and there's not a huge number of people working on this when you compare with how many people are working on iOS, Android, and Tizen, and Windows Phone. Remember them? There's very few people working on this, so I just don't think we have the resources to do that.
Yeah. And when you compare it to the desktop release, we've streamlined the desktop release by dropping some of the release candidates, but we still have several weeks throughout the cycle where things are frozen. You can't land new code while we fix the bugs and stabilize the image. We can't take 3 weeks of freeze in a 6 weeks release cycle. And if we shorten that even more, to like every 4 weeks or less, we're going to have very little time where things are not changing rapidly to actually stabilize those images.
Yeah.
So I think 6 weeks is really pushing the limits of how quickly we can release stable updates. As Alan said, there's the RC proposed channel. You get daily updates. That's what I run. You do get a lot of new bugs in there. A lot of the old bugs get fixed and then come back and then get fixed again. So it's not exactly a more stable environment. If your concern is living with bugs for too long, then the daily images are not for you. But they have been pretty good. I mean, I haven't had it brick my phone in over a year. So that it's pretty safe to run if you don't mind, things changing quite frequently under you.
And of course, I am obliged at this point to say, you're welcome to get involved and help us fix some of those bugs, because we have a very big list. There is a giant list of bugs all over the stack, in the individual applications, in Unity itself, beneath that in Bluetooth, the networking stack, 3G, the way indicators appear. There are bugs everywhere, which is why we keep saying this is, a developer and enthusiast phone, because people are a bit more forgiving about those kind of bugs. So yeah, I would say if you're interested in helping, just get in contact with one of us or go to developer.ubuntu.com and have a look around and see. You might think, you might not think you've got the skills to do it, but you'd be surprised. Even I can fix stuff, and I'm not a developer, so
yeah, I mean, we really do have something for people of all levels of technical experience. I mentioned fixing or adding keyboard shortcuts to the Ubuntu browser earlier. I couldn't do that in Firefox or Chrome just because I don't know C and C++ nearly well enough to contribute that kind of a fix to those. But QML is remarkably easy. It uses JavaScript to glue it together, but most of it, you're just declaring, here's a thing, put it in the app, and it does all the magic for you. So even if you're not a hardcore developer, most of the apps and even most of Unity's interface itself is written in QML.
And the other thing is there's non-coding things as well. Like today, I've contributed to 3 applications by writing test cases, writing a set of manual tests. Press this button, this is what you should see. Swipe this way, that's what you should see. And that's just me, writing text. And that's going to be used by people who are going to manually test the apps on the phone. And that's a way to contribute that's going to improve quality, because when the apps are being QA'd, someone will potentially find bugs and find issues and block updates to applications. So a buggy app won't get to your phone because they found it because of the awesome manual test case you ran, potentially.
Yeah, that's a great way to get started. And if you're running the RC proposed, you can make sure that new bugs don't make it into the stable OTA release by running those tests frequently. And you can get with Nick Skaggs, his IRC nick is Balloons. He's been working really hard to make that easier and easier for people to get involved with.
Cool.
All right, next is from Ridgewing. He says, is there a place where we can suggest guests in the obvious absence of a guest for the Q&A? Who's best to get in touch with about that? Who's doing the scheduling? So we've had a lot of requests just on here on questions, and we've got internally just a doc with a list of names on it that we try and get. So that's probably the best way, is to let us know here. You can reach us on IRC anytime, or the Ubuntu Community team mailing list. All right, next is also from Ridgewing. Is there going to be a cradle for the Convergence phone? And why not when Android is kicking butt in this area? So
Sorry,
I don't actually know.
I'm just preparing an answer for a question that I've seen coming up. So there would be just one.
So yeah, I haven't heard about the hardware specifics for the Convergence phone, if they're going to have some kind of dock or not. I would hope so, because that does make it easier.
No, I haven't either, and I don't think anyone has seen the device yet. So, I certainly haven't. So
yeah. Now, what's cool is BQ is they're a very open source friendly company, and they're very big into 3D printing and openness around 3D printing. So even if they don't provide a converged dock for their phone, they might provide some 3D printable models so people can make their own, which would be really cool.
That would be awesome. Next question from Andrew Hazen asks, as iPlayer works on the Ubuntu phone, does Netflix work? I just tried it. That's what I was just testing. And the answer is no. I don't know whether it's yeah, something on our phone, or there's a plugin we're missing, or what. But no is the short answer. Netflix currently doesn't work. But I think you may be right. I think the encrypted media extensions are missing, which is the bit we don't have.
So iPlayer doesn't need those? It's not DRM protected?
It seems not. I tweeted a picture of it working about half an hour ago, and someone from the BBC iPlayer team saw that and replied, "Oh, what's that? I think we did on that device," which is not surprising. But I don't know if that means we didn't test on that, we should block that device now, or we didn't test on that, yay, isn't it good another device works? I'm hoping the latter.
Right. Yeah, so if iPlayer doesn't work on Ubuntu phones tomorrow, blame Popey.
It's my fault, sorry.
All right, Ridgewing asks, are Popey or M. Hall watching the Bad Voltage live stream from Germany tomorrow? So for those who don't know, Bad Voltage is a podcast put together by a group of people, including John O'Bacon, who used to be our manager.
Yes,
I, for one, will not be watching it, I don't think. Oh, yeah, and Stuart, who used to work here.
Yeah, and Brian Lunduk and Jeremy Garcia from Linux Questions. I don't know. I don't know what time it's on. So I will try. If it's on at a time when I can watch it, that would be awesome.
So I got to see the first Bad Voltage live out in California earlier this year, and it was a great show. It was good fun. Anybody who's going to be around, I really encourage you to go see it, because they're funny guys. They're fun to watch. If you find the live stream, go for it.
Cool.
All right, the next question from Ridgewing. Wily Werewolf is pretty close to launch now. Can you give us a background as to the promotion by Canonical and how to get involved with Ubuntu Loco groups? And will Mark Shuttleworth give another keynote? So Mark has been doing Q&A sessions at the Ubuntu Online Summits. He hasn't done keynotes in the past few ones. Rick Spencer has been doing those recently, and I expect and I hope that Rick will do a keynote again this cycle. If you're watching Rick, there's your cue. He will be, like I said, I'm pretty sure he will be doing a Q&A, which is like this, only with Mark, of course, which have always been very popular. As far as getting involved with your Loco team, the best thing to do is go to loco.ubuntu.com. That's our Loco team portal. Find your closest team there. There will be all kinds of links on how to get in touch with them and just get involved. Planning events is probably one of the best ways to contribute. It's not difficult to do. You just have to pick a time and a place and tell people you're going to be there, and people will just show up. A lot of people will show up, even if not a lot of people will actually plan and organize the event. So that's the best way to get involved.
That's been my experience as well. Often what people make the mistake of doing is trying to look for interest in an event and try and find people who are willing to come to the event. And what's in my experience better is to just schedule the event, is to just make it happen, and then whoever comes will come. If you get a deluge of people, that's great. If you get a few people, that's fine as well. But I wouldn't worry too much about who says they're going to come before they come. Just schedule it, get it planned, and then start promoting it so you can get as many people coming as you like.
Yeah, I mean, I've had some of the best Loco team meetups just at a coffee shop and a bookstore.
Cool.
All right, NetLawyer asks, why not use Ubuntu browser? Are there any plans to support plugins? So this may have gone back to our discussion about changing the default browser. As far as I know, we don't have any plans to support plugins right now. I don't think we're necessarily opposed to it. We're just not at that point in the development of our browser where we can start thinking about that yet.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know anything about the future direction of the browser, to be honest. Next question is, Ridgewing is on fire in IRC now, asking when is the next UDS, the Developer Summit? That entirely depends on whether you mean the old style Ubuntu Developer Summit or the Ubuntu Online Summit, which is the entirely online version. I don't know if we're going to have another Ubuntu Developer Summit, in-person Developer Summit. I don't know when the next one of those would be. But the next Ubuntu Online Summit is at the beginning of November. Did you say it was the first week in November?
I believe so. I'll have to double check. There's a sprint listed already for it, I think, on Launchpad, and it was announced on some of the mailing lists a couple of weeks ago.
Oh yeah, it was me that announced it. I remember. Memory like a sieve. Lexicon has asked, since a browser is a large and complex program and therefore takes a lot of effort to develop and maintain, would it not make more sense to let some organizations such as the Mozilla Foundation deal with it and for Canonical to focus on the OS?
Yes, and in fact, that's kind of what we did. So our browser is built on top of Chromium. The Chromium project has produced this API which lets you build on top of the core browser components. So really, we're just taking the Chromium rendering engine, including HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and putting an app wrapper around that. So we provide the UI, the Chrome of the browser itself, but the bulk of the heavy lifting is being done by Chromium, which is why we were able to make such a good browser so quickly, because we are really just having to focus on the shell of it.
Right. And you know, there's nothing stopping anyone else bringing their browser to Ubuntu phone. You know, if Mozilla wanted to port Firefox to Ubuntu phone, they could do that. So, and that would fit the model that you're suggesting of leave them to do the browser and we'll do the rest of it. There's nothing stopping someone else bringing a browser to Ubuntu.
Right. And in fact, somebody was working on a different browser for, among other things, Ubuntu Touch. I don't remember the name of it now. Do you?
No, there is actually a second browser in the store, I think, that's under development.
Kit.
Yeah, no, there's another one more recently than that. So yeah, the general answer is yes. Someone could develop a browser for Ubuntu Touch. The next question is from Gummy Gum. Are there any Telegram updates? The Telegram app is far behind Android and iOS. Lots of features are missing in Ubuntu. Yeah, the upstream Telegram are super active, and we're constantly playing catch up to implement the features that they put in. They put stickers in, and they put additional things like broadcast channels and other kinds of controls and things. And I think there is a new version of our Telegram app in development that's being worked on with some other upstream projects as the back end, which should make our app development accelerate a bit faster.
Yeah, so version 2 is being worked on, and it was, from what I've heard, a pretty major refactoring to get it to work with these other upstream projects. But it does mean that we're collaborating more with others, and that should ease the development burden on us.
Yeah. Awesome. So yeah, we'll look out for that. Everyone is asking for that. You're not the only person looking out for a new version of Telegram, but it is currently under development.
Yeah.
Next question from Ridgering. What are Popey and Mike doing for Movember? Will there be a GoFundMe campaign for Popey's moustache? I don't generally do Movember because I can barely, this is like 3 months of facial hair, so I just like my facial hair looks like a joke at all times. So
yeah, no, I only grow facial hair when I'm lazy and don't shave.
That's me right now.
not really my thing, and not something my wife wants to see, so that's not going to happen.
Yeah, I tend to donate to other people rather than have to go through the ridicule of doing it myself, which gets me out of that. So then there was another question from Lexicon saying, will Firefox come to the Ubuntu phone? I think we talked about that. It will do if someone ports it, and that would be awesome.
Yeah. I will. So I want to throw something out, not browser related, but something that Alan has been working with some community people on, and that is bringing open document support to the Ubuntu phone as part of the document viewer. And that's actually using a project from LibreOffice. So it's not quite a LibreOffice port to Ubuntu phones yet, but it is kind of a step in that direction, which is really cool.
Well,
sorry, just thought of that and wanted to throw it out.
Yeah, it's specifically for the viewer rather than full LibreOffice. So you're not going to be editing documents on your phone, in a tiny, tiny window doing Excel, LibreOffice style spreadsheets. It's more so that you can, open documents on the go, and that's still we're working on that. What's next? Pavak Paul asks, is it possible to include Pepperflash plugin non-free in Ubuntu restricted extras? It's important for Chromium. Most people ask me how they can get Flash working in Chromium. That's a good question, actually. I don't know how Pepperflash works in terms of how it gets Flash on your system. Does it rip it out of a Chrome package or something and just like drop the library in the right place or something horrid?
Yeah, that sounds like it's probably going to be more of a technical challenge than a political or legal one. You should talk to some Ubuntu developers on that. So Ubuntu Devel Discuss mailing list would be your best bet.
It's it's certainly an interesting question because for many years we've had a Flash plugin package which you've been able to install fairly easily, and now Adobe have dropped Linux as a supported platform. People have to jump through some hoops to get Flash on their desktop, which is a bit of a shame. Yeah, I don't know the answer, but I'd agree with Mike. This is something that file a bug that it should be installed by default, like a bug against, I don't know, Ubiquity, and then raise a question. I think on Devel Discuss, it might have to go to the technical board. I don't know. It could be a policy change or something. But
all right,
it could be worth doing.
Next one sounds like one for you, Alan. Do you know what big picture mode in Steam is? Could the mobile UI be used on a TV to allow for greater viewing distance? Is this possible with grid? Okay, so it's more of a, I guess, Ubuntu question. I just saw Steam in there and thought of you.
Well, I think he's likening it to Steam Big Picture Mode, which is, so typically, traditionally, you'd play games on a PC in your office or your den or something, but it's quite common for people to want to play on the TV in big, high resolution, big screen kind of thing, sitting on the other side of the room with a controller in your hand. And I think the question is more, could we do a similar thing, making a 10-foot UI in Unity, I guess?
So the short answer to that is yes. That is part of the big picture plan. No pun intended. But the big plan for Unity 8 is to do that. Grid units are specifically designed to support that kind of use case. A few years back, we had this Ubuntu TV prototype. And even though that didn't go anywhere because we didn't find any hardware partners for it, we still, we're keeping that in mind. That's still something we want to come back to. So all of the work that's going into the phone and desktop convergence also has a view towards supporting that big picture mode on a TV.
Yeah, I'd love to see that revived, but I think we've got to get through, a lot of other things first before we can revisit that. But it would be good for if I think that's something a community person could pick up and prototype based on Unity 8, the existing Unity 8 code base. And I know there are people who work on Unity 8 who are interested in this kind of thing as well. But for us, the priority is first of all the converged device and getting a device to market first. Before we look at things that we know we don't have a deal for yet, if that makes sense.
All right, Ridgewing is asking if we could give our Twitter and Google Plus usernames. So I'm mhall119 just about everywhere. That's IRC, Twitter, email mhall119@ubuntu.com. I think Google Plus is the only exception. I think I'm Michael Hall 119 there because they wouldn't give me the short one for some reason.
So I'm Popey just about everywhere that I can be. On Google Plus, I've got a nice shortcut. You can get to my Google Plus profile. If you go to popey.com/plus, it redirects to my Google Plus profile. But also if you just go to my website, popey.com, I've got a contact page that links to everywhere.
I've got the same shortcut actually on mhall119.com/plus, and I think I stole that from you.
Excellent. Oh, it's good to see that works. We're running out of time, so let's burn through some more questions. What's your favorite app at the moment, and what app is at the top of your wish list? Is from Just Caracas. Okay, so what's your favorite app currently?
Monster Wars. It's my new addictive game.
I would say probably one of the stupid, annoying HTML5 games that I put in the store. Or actually, no, Neverball. It's an old game, but I love the fact that someone ported an SDL game to Ubuntu Touch. So Neverball is my current favorite. Wish list, WhatsApp, just so that everyone shuts up and stops asking us about it.
So I don't actually use WhatsApp anywhere, so that's not on my wish list.
That's not why I want it. I want it so everyone shuts up about it.
I would like a better Facebook app because Facebook's mobile web just isn't quite there. So either they make a better mobile web and give us some integration, or provide a native app for us. One of the two.
Okay.
Gummy Gum is asking if Yola can make a tablet, why can't Canonical? Because Yola paid for it.
Well, yeah, that's true. They chose to make one. We will probably revisit tablets. I don't know, maybe next year.
Yeah. So we're working on a tablet interface, but we don't want to make hardware. We don't want to be a hardware company. We don't want to sell devices. We want to find partners to do that for us so that we can focus on the software.
I would be surprised if you don't see a tablet next year. If you could buy the Uber webcam that definitely worked with Ubuntu 100% of the time, which one would you suggest? And I'll put it on my Amazon wishlist. This is from Ridgewing. So I would choose the one that I have because it works, and that is a Logitech webcam, I think.
Right.
So yeah.
So I use the one that's built into my ThinkPad, and it just worked. I have in the past used Logitech webcams, and those seem to be really good with compatibility.
Yeah, I've had no problem with this at all. Although in the past I did used to get the weird freak out thing in Google Hangouts where everything would go all disco and
yeah, we haven't seen that in a little while.
Well, you know, I'm on Wiley now, and I'm on kernel 4.2. It may well be it's fixed in, you know, that kernel or something, or maybe I don't know where that problem was, but it's fixed, so we'll forget all about that.
The next one is definitely for you.
How's Sky? Sky is my cat. Is she feeling the weather? I know Sky sounds like a girl's name, but Sky is actually a boy. I don't want to start, you know, imposing gender roles on the cat, but yeah, he's fine. He's naughty, but he's cute.
All right, Netlore asks, is anything being done about the memory management killing apps? So this is something that we really have to do on the phone, because when you run out of memory on the phone, we don't want you swapping to internal storage because there's not a lot of that. So really the main focus has been just trying to reduce the memory footprint of everything that we're running. And I think that's just the challenge that we face on mobile hardware. Now, we do have something called State Saver for our apps where they can save information about where they are. So if they do get killed by the memory manager, when you switch back to them, it will restore it to where it was before it was killed. I've implemented a little bit of that on my Reddit app, and it works. It seems to work really well. And this is similar to what Android does, as far as I've been able to tell.
Right.
Ridgewing is asking, what Kickstarter or Indiegogo or Patreon have you seen that really appeals to you? So, Ellen, I know you've done a lot of these.
Yeah, I back a bunch of Kickstarters and things. I haven't backed any recently. There's one which is a game that I backed, and it's called Scraps. And it runs on Windows, Mac, and Linux. I generally tend to only back games that work on Linux. And Scraps is a game where you build a car and you attach engine, and you can trade up your engine. And it's got like Lego bricks on the side of the car kind of thing. So you can just attach bits all over the car, and you can attach guns and stuff. And then you drive around and you shoot people and stuff in your gun. And it's quite hilarious, like driving around in this stupid gun. You play online with other people. So that's my favorite one that I've backed recently, is a Linux game called Scraps.
So recently I've backed the Mycroft, which is an open source artificial intelligence appliance. So it's similar to Amazon Echo or Google's, what's it called? Hub, something like that.
Which one? The Amazon or the
Google one? I don't remember the name.
I have no idea what that one's called.
So anyway, Mycroft is just this little appliance, sits in a room, listens for you to call its name, and then will respond to verbal instructions using natural language processing. And I liked it because it is open source on the device, and they are looking for open source alternatives for the backend, so that you're not stuck into Google or Amazon's backend. You can switch it around. So I backed them enough to get the Raspberry Pi device image of the software, because I already have a Raspberry Pi that I've been looking for something to do with. So that's what I'm excited for now. I'm waiting for that to come out.
I backed that one as well, but I backed the one where you get the actual device, because my Raspberry Pi 2 is in this thing that's just behind me over here, which is an arcade machine and play arcade games. So I needed another Raspberry Pi, so I figured I'd get the whole thing. So I'm looking forward to that as well. Being able to shout commands at my computer sounds like fun.
So they did a Kickstarter, which we helped them promote, which was successful. So all that's going to happen now. But they've also now started an Indiegogo campaign to add additional features. I think they're trying to get funding to add a webcam or something to their device. So if you missed the Kickstarter campaign and you still want to contribute to this, you can find them on Indiegogo now. That's Mycroft, Mycroft.
Oh, we're over time. That was a lot of questions.
That was, yeah. If we didn't get to your question, we're terribly sorry, but we will be back next week. Maybe not us, maybe some other people from our team, hopefully with a guest next week. You can always bring them then, or you can find us on IRC anytime. We're in a bunch of the Ubuntu IRC channels, including #Ubuntu-community-team on Freenode. So if you can't wait a week to ask your questions, you can go find us there and ask. You could follow us on Twitter at Ubuntu On Air, and you can watch this video and any other Ubuntu On Air videos that have been recorded on YouTube/Ubuntu On Air. All right, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Alan.
Thanks, Mike.
And we will see you guys later.
See you all next week.
Bye.
Bye.